Monday morning, a very special Monday morning for our friend Matt Lauer.
Once one of the most trusted faces in morning television, Matt Lauer built a career on charm, polish, and credibility. For decades, he was the man millions invited into their homes each morning, the steady voice of NBC's Today Show. Calm, confident, and unflappable, he was the anchor who could pivot seamlessly from hard-hitting interviews with presidents to playful segments with celebrities, all while maintaining a polished warmth that made him feel like family. To viewers, he seemed untouchable, the very definition of what a morning show host should be. But behind that carefully crafted image lurked a darker story, one that would ultimately destroy his career, his reputation, and the trust of an entire audience. His downfall wasn't gradual, it was swift, shocking, and permanent. In November of 2017, a single complaint ignited a scandal that ended his career overnight.
I am inevitable.
And Matt Lauer has never returned to television since. It all began with an announcement no one expected. On November 29, 2017, NBC News executives informed staff that Lauer had been fired, effective immediately. The decision followed a complaint from a female colleague who alleged he had behaved inappropriately during the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia, and continued the behavior after returning to New York. NBC chairman Andrew Lack released a memo stating the complaint was the first formal one against Lauer, but they believed it was not an isolated incident. The announcement stunned viewers who had just watched him on air the day before. Overnight, the man who had become part of America's mornings was gone. The network made the termination especially final by emphasizing that Lauer was fired for cause. That meant no severance, despite a contract worth tens of millions that was due to run through 2018. Publicly, NBC claimed it had been unaware of earlier allegations, but whispers suggested otherwise. Some colleagues admitted later that rumors had circulated for years. Linda Vester, a former correspondent, went so far as to say everybody knew he had a dangerous reputation. The story didn't end there. In 2019, journalist Ronan Farrow's book Catch and Kill revealed that NBC executives may have known far more than they admitted, suggesting that the network had ignored red flags to protect one of its biggest stars. Farrow also drew connections between NBC's silence and its handling of other powerful men, including Harvey Weinstein, who reportedly pressured the network not to investigate him. Suddenly, Lauer's story became part of the larger #MeToo reckoning, a symbol of how institutions protected influential men at the expense of women's safety. As the reporting deepened, multiple women came forward. Variety reported at least 10 accusers, with complaints spanning from the early 2000s through 2017. NBC eventually acknowledged 3 additional claims, further confirming a pattern. The most explosive allegation came from Brooke Nevels, a former producer, who told Farrow that Lauer had assaulted her in his hotel room during the Sochi Olympics. She described subsequent encounters as coerced and transactional, rooted in fear that her career depended on compliance. Her testimony shattered whatever image of trust Lauer had left. Lauer denied the most serious allegations but admitted to having affairs with colleagues. He insisted relationships were consensual, but the power imbalance was undeniable. 2 weeks after his firing, another former staffer, Addie Zinone, spoke out about her own relationship with him in 2000. She described it as consensual but framed it as an abuse of power, saying she felt she had little choice but to comply. Others, including a Today Show booker, accused him of exposing himself at a party, claims Lauer and his lawyers flatly denied. Even before the scandal broke, there had been signs his reputation was not as clean as it seemed.
Oh my God! Dang, dang, diggity, dang, 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 diggity, dang, dang.
Wow.
At a 2008 Friars Club roast, colleagues openly joked about his reputation with women on staff. At the time, the joke seemed uncomfortable but harmless. In hindsight, they were a warning of what was to come. The collapse of his career was total. There was no farewell broadcast, no final sign-off. Just a scandal that forced NBC to cut ties instantly and permanently. His fall became part of pop culture, inspiring speculation that Apple TV's The Morning Show, with Steve Carell playing a disgraced anchor, was loosely based on his downfall. In the years since, Lauer has largely disappeared from public life. He retreated to the Hamptons, where sightings are rare and often make headlines when they occur. In December 2023, paparazzi photographed him shopping in casual clothes, a stark contrast to the tailored suits that once defined him. Friends say his life has grown smaller. A source told People magazine that he has greatly changed his friend circle, cutting ties with many and choosing a much more private existence. Relationships with former colleagues have fractured. Katie Couric, once one of his closest allies, publicly cut all ties, saying she realized there was a side of him she never truly knew. Savannah Guthrie, his former co-anchor, initially reached out but later condemned the behavior and distanced herself. Al Roker offered only brief, cautious remarks, saying simply, "We wish him well." At an NBC producer's wedding in 2023, Lauer was seen interacting with some former colleagues for the first time, including Guthrie and Roker. But the encounters were polite rather than warm, reminders of how much had changed. One of the few to stand by him is Bryant Gumbel, another former Today co-host, who has remained a loyal friend. Gumbel has described Lauer as a good man and insisted he is doing fine, though most others from his old world have moved on. On the personal side, Lauer divorced his wife, Annette Roque, following the scandal.
Tell her story, and any other women who have their own stories to tell.
In 2019, he began dating Shaman Abbas, a longtime acquaintance and publicist. The two live quietly, preferring to stay away from media attention. Those who know him say he has settled into a kind of exile, comfortable financially but cut off from the influence, power, and prestige that once defined his life. For someone who spent more than 20 years as a fixture of American mornings, the contrast is stark. Lauer went from earning $20 to $25 million a year, interviewing presidents, and anchoring Olympic coverage to a man rarely seen, barely spoken of, and permanently associated with scandal. His career didn't end with a graceful retirement or a planned farewell. It ended in disgrace, and the reputation he built so carefully will likely never recover. Matt Lauer's story is no longer just about television success. It's about how quickly trust can be shattered, how power can be abused, and how even the most familiar faces can harbor dark secrets. Once a cultural icon, he now lives in the shadows, a reminder of how fast the mighty can fall, and why he will never work again in the world that once made him a star.